Starting soon. Starting.
live. Hello, Sir Oxbill.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. And welcome dito sa new segment namin, Tech Guys on Fridays. Ito yung bagong segment dito sa RTG. And I'm Bullet, and together with Oxbill, we will be your tech guys every Fridays. So, usapang tambay tayo ngayon. Kahit anong pag-usapan natin, since naman to, initial or test live stream, and yung topic natin is about MikroTik. So, tatawagan natin tatawag natin dito, sir. TikTok.
Test live stream, TikTok. Tech Guys on Fridays,
TikTok. So, magsasayaw ka.
Walang dance floor sa...
Walang dance floor. So,
ayan, mga episode 110 kung meron pa.
Ayan, practice natin to. So, we are live from Rizal. Ayan. And Sir Oxbill is live
from Davao de Oro, Mindanao.
Ayan. So, ayan o nga pala, nag 1K na pala yung ating channel. So, sa lahat ng mga sumusuporta na nagsasubscribe, hanggat may isang naniniwala at nanonood sa channel natin, tuloy lang tayo. And at the end of this stream, may announcement tayo. So, mamimigay yata si Sir Oxbill na ano ba ipapamigay mo? CCR.
Tignan natin. May natira pa.
Okay, so yung topic natin today is MikroTik beginners setup. Okay. Kung ano ba yung dapat pag-aralan ng mga baguhan, kung with default configuration ba o no default configuration. Kasi sa mga training tinuturo natin yan yung no default and default configuration. And ano ba yung take mo dyan, Sir Oxbill? Ano ba yung mas maganda? No default or with default?
I will probably answer that later on the 59th minute. We will surely tackle that. What should be the appropriate configuration to start with? Should be covered by this live stream or topic for tonight.
Okay. Lipat na natin. I-discuss mo na yung topic.
Okay, so our time is 7:07. Okay, so I'll hold on a bit. Let me set up the presentation. Let me know, guys, if you can see the slide and you can hear me properly, Sir Bullet.
Okay. Naririnig dito sa sa ating live stream. Pero kailangan ko yatang baguhin yung link dun sa ating FB.
I see. Okay, so for our first live stream or for RTG Rizal Tech Guide, thank you for inviting me, Sir Bullet. So since it's the first and test live stream, let's perhaps start slow and discuss on MikroTik the choices for default configuration versus no default configuration. So as a buyer or as a technician or as a wants to deploy or install or set up MikroTik, of course you don't have any option to start. It's really with default, but it's a matter of choosing now whether you start with default configuration or you simply erase the configuration and start from zero or scratch and do it from your own. So that will be your options or choices for configuring MikroTik. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So default configuration. So like any device or equipment that you buy, whether it's another brand, okay, there is some form of default configuration. Although I know some devices that are really empty or minimal configuration or no default configuration, or there is a wizard that you need to supply the parameters or settings that you wish to be on that particular device. So uh, that's another type of device. So for MikroTik, there is a default configuration. Also, all router boards. So that's their term. Router boards. So from came from Latvia, Lithuania, or whatever official or authorized factory by MikroTik around the world, it comes with default configurations. However, as you all know, router boards are different. They are not the same because some carries, for example, wireless, some with LTE, some is a switch, some is with a router OS. Okay, so it will depend on the board type as well. So there are different default configurations for depending on the board type. But obviously, it's just minimal difference for the default configuration. So default configurations can vary from a CPE router, customer premises equipment router. You have the LTE CPE AP router, the AP router, the point-to-point bridge, okay, WISP, which is very popular today, wireless internet service providers.
Oh, maganda yan.
I hope there are subscribers or watchers from this evening's live stream. That is a WIS operator. So I myself is a WIS operator, small network, but growing. So switch, IP only, and CAP. So CAP is not your college insurance, but it's a controlled access point. Okay, so there will be different configuration based on the board type. Okay, so these are the usually choices that you'll have. Okay, so what's inside normally on a default configuration? So for a MikroTik, so they term the interface as Ether1. Okay, so on other brands, they might call it Ethernet, fast Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet, 10 gigabit Ethernet. But for MikroTik, it's Ether1, Ether2, Ether3, and so on and so forth. Okay, or can call it port 1. So it is by default supposed to be connected to your internet service provider or to your WAN, okay, wide area network. And by default is a DHCP client. Okay, meaning to say it is waiting for a DHCP server. Normally your uh, uh, ISP router, provided router, will provide an IP address. Okay, so to the MikroTik. So that is why by default it's a DHCP client. So by default also the port number 1 is protected by a firewall. So this is one of the advantage of a default configuration. The one side or the going to the internet is already protected by a firewall rule. So later we will see that particular firewall rule. Okay, so for clear, so port number 1, so meaning to say the single ISP only, okay, for the default configuration. So then follows the rest of the ports. So a bridge interface is automatically created, also by default created, and the remaining ports, so be it you have a hub light, which is you have 4 ports, a hub mini, you have a hex, which also has a different ports, you go to RB4011, so on and so forth. Okay, normally the remaining Ethernet ports are members of a bridge interface. So a bridge, so in networking, is a layer 2 device. Okay, you have hub, you have bridge, you have switch. Obviously, bridge is yung processing niya is CPU. So ideally, it is slower in processing versus a switch per se, because switch has a CPU. And of course, part of the bridge is the wireless interface. Now in MikroTik, you will have some single band or single interface for wireless. If you have hub AC Lite, you may have two wireless interface, WLAN 1 and WLAN 2 as members of the bridge. Okay, so this bridge has a default IP address 192.168.88.1/24. So if you'll notice slash 24, that is the net mask or the notation for the subnet mask that is the MikroTik is using. So it is not the normal subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. So if you are familiar with IPv6, they are using the CIDR notation, or in traditional terms or whatever, slash notation or the prefix. So you have the slash 24, you have slash 25, and so on and so forth. So it's this slash 24 is basically the same as 255.255.255.0. So the bridge interface has a DHCP server. So the difference is between a DHCP server and a client. A DHCP server is providing an IP address. So if I have a laptop that is connected to port number 2, 3, 4, or even on my wireless interface, I will get a DHCP or IP from the DHCP server, provided that I have an obtain on my network card. So I will get an IP address from the DHCP server. It is also DNS server enabled. Okay, for guys, you will see it later. So DNS server, meaning to say it is providing name resolution. So MikroTik, the MikroTik router is providing or is acting as the name resolution or server, or domain name system server, and for you to resolve names such as YouTube to an IP address and so on and so forth. Okay, so slide clear, Sir Bullet?
Clear na clear.
Okay, I have to ask Sir Bullet because I don't know, in live stream I don't know if you can hear my voice or you can see my slide, so just bust me up. Okay, so what are the other things inside the default configuration? So there is an interface list. If you buy another firewall, not MikroTik brand, they may have what we call zones. Okay, you have one zone, you have a LAN zone, you have a DMZ zone, the delimitarized zone. Okay, so it's more like zoning in MikroTik. You have an interface list, LAN and WAN. So the difference between this interface list to the real interface is interface list is for grouping purposes and is for use for policy purposes later, or firewalling later, so that you can have a singular firewall line instead of multiple lines, where in fact that particular firewall line is targeting those interfaces. So in other words, you can write lesser lines on your firewall and other settings in your MikroTik. Okay, so bridge is a automatic member of the LAN, and of course Ether1 is a member of a WAN. Okay, so wireless interfaces are configured as an access point. So in MikroTik, they may have a different terminology. So if you buy consumer brands, of course, access point or station or repeater or whatsoever. In MikroTik, the setting is AP bridge. So there is also bridge. So in access point is AP bridge. So network address translation is configured with Ether1 as the default out interface. So network address translation, because in the LAN side, normally you will configure a private IP address. Private IP address 192.168 something, 10 that something, 172.16 something. Okay, so those are private IP addresses. Okay, so if you want to go from LAN to WAN, or you want this computer, which is carrying an IP address, to communicate to Facebook server, YouTube server, or MikroTik or gaming server, which is outside, it needs to present with a source IP of a public IP. So it doesn't mean that the Ether1 is a public IP. So it will carry a private, especially if it is coming from an ISP router. So hindi pa rin public IP yung sa MikroTik natin. Kumbaga naka-double NAT pa rin. Meron pa ring NAT dun sa ISP router. So the ISP router is the one carrying the public IP. Of course, a different story if you you tell your telco to configure the router that they provide as a bridge mode. So therefore, if they are on bridge mode, the the IP will not be there, or the network translations will not be there because it's not acting as a router. Now the MikroTik carries the public IP. So firewall filter rules are added. So these are, I would say, the advantages of MikroTik, because if you are thinking of only connectivity, yes, you can do it on the no default. But for the security part, given na kasi doon sa default configuration, you might tinker on few rules, but most of not really most, but the essential rules of in terms of security is already there. But of course, it's a different scenario when if it's really a border router, then you might have to do more filter rules because it's prone for DDoS attack or any other attacks. So, but the essential filter rules are already added. So clear? 7:19. I don't want to be overtime 1 hour. Walang extension ang ating okay. Other default configurations are neighbor discovery settings. So neighbor discovery settings, if you are familiar with the other brand, they have the CDP, the blank discovery protocol. I will not say the name of the brand. So you have in MikroTik, you have the MNDP. Okay, so neighbor discovery setting is you will discover the capabilities of the MikroTik. If there is another MikroTik connected to one of its port, via neighbor discovery, it can discover the capabilities of that particular device, be it a router, be it a switch, a model, the uptime, and so on and so forth. So that's the advantage of having neighbor discovery. However, it may also be a security loophole, because if your entire network is with neighbor discovery setting, I can just simply connect to one of the device and go to the discovery and see all the device connected. So meaning to say, in other words, I only need to go in or hack in to one of the device, and I will see your network, the entirety of the network. So it could be for the good side and for the bad side normally. So you have to so-called really consider this. Okay, so Mac Winbox and the Mac server. So Mac server, the Mac Winbox is, of course, you have the Mac Telnet, you have the Mac Ping. Okay, is allowed on LAN interface. So MikroTik is one of the few devices that you can connect via its media access control or MAC or layer 2 address. So I don't necessarily have the IP address as the default. Okay, I may have 192.168.1 dot something on my laptop, and the MikroTik is 192.168.88.1 by default. So I can still connect, but provided I will connect on the layer 2, provided I'm on the layer 2 or the LAN interface. So second to the last bullet. So you buy MikroTik normally because of popularity, because of bandwidth management, of routing. Okay, so better value in money. Okay, because MikroTik can support bandwidth management, traffic engineering, as you would say, and you have also what we call routing as one of the popular features of MikroTik. So in no default, there is no bandwidth management configured. And you will see on the firewall rules later, the forward packets are fast track. Okay, so I'll just explain it later. What is a forward packet and what is fast track? Okay, so obviously single ISP configuration. So if you have multiple ISP, if you have several ISP in your vicinity or in your area or in your office, okay, you cannot only rely on default configuration. You have to change the configuration from the default or from a scratch. So ito po yung kumbaga limitation of the default configuration. But if many will say, is MikroTik plug and play? Although question later, we have Q&A later. But normally, when I also sell MikroTik, so the normal question is, one of the question is MikroTik plug and play? Is the product plug and play? You could answer yes, problem is you don't know what is on the LAN or the customer requirement. Okay, perhaps the customer has 2 ISP, 3 ISP. Perhaps the customer want to segregate LAN. So if you'll notice, we don't have VLAN or virtual local area network, which is popular nowadays in vending or piso Wi-Fi. Okay, in Philippines, the VLAN was popularized for piso Wi-Fi or vendo, but on other countries, okay, or other enterprise, VLAN is really to segregate, for example, your voice, your camera, your guest network, your staff network, your server network. Yun po yung talagang meant ni VLAN. So those things are not available on the default configuration. Okay? So clear, guys? Okay, so clear. So plug and play. MikroTik is plug and play in a certain way. However, if you have more feature requirement, if you have more resources, you have more ISP, then it's not a plug and play. You have to change or add more to the configuration. Okay? So this part now is for demo. So system default configuration print. So I will open my Winbox. Guys, can see? Sir Bullet can see the Winbox?
Meron.
Okay, so for the purposes, because we are saving some time, we have only 1 hour. So MikroTik can be accessed on many different platforms or apps. So you could use your typical browser. So you can type the IP address, okay, 192.168.88.1 on your browser, and it will log in. Okay, you can also use your PuTTY or your Telnet emulator or SSH client, then you can SSH into your MikroTik. You can obviously use a MikroTik app if you have a smartphone, or you can download it from the App Stores or Google Play. You can use it also as well. However, since MikroTik, so we'll use a MikroTik utility. We call it Winbox. So you can download this Winbox. Okay, very small utility. Okay, so it's open file location. So anyways, so it should not be very big, very huge. Okay, so this is the. Okay, I will just close it for a while. So when you open the MikroTik, the Winbox utility, so you will see this interface. Okay, so you have connect to, which is a MAC address, login, admin, and no password. Okay, so on and so forth. You have here. So may mga problems in connecting MikroTik, advanced mode and legacy mode. So make sure that those are checked. So you could see that this is with no default configuration. Okay, so medyo let's connect. I will connect it to my hex instead. So I have 2 MikroTik. So because I'm connected to okay, so this is now the hex RB750GR3, the ever popular hex. So I can simply click MAC address. I can simply click the IP address. Okay, so I will click the MAC address. Okay, for you to be able to see that I can connect. So now I'm connected. So this will show you that you are inside a default configuration. Okay, so okay. So for you to review what's inside the configuration, /system default configuration print. So you go to new terminal. Okay, just bear with me, guys. Okay, I don't want you guys to see the first time using MikroTik and using a command line. I'm not really configuring. I'm just showing you what are the settings, okay, inside a default configuration. Okay, so it's not configuring. It's just displaying to you what's okay. So there are some instructions by MikroTik. Please change to a strong password, upgrade the software, enable the functions, and so forth. So we are here. So one port is protected by the firewall. The LAN is with this address. The one is a Dhcp client, and you have the NAT. You have an IP firewall enabled. So you can actually review in spacebar. If you are in programming, you know how to read if statement, while statement. You can see the script. Okay, we call it script of for the default configuration and other configurations that you can access to. Okay, because it's not only by default. There's also CAPS mode or control access point mode. There's another script for that. Okay, so the command is /system default -configuration print. So let's take a look at the things I've said in the few previous slides. Okay, so like I said, okay, the interfaces. So the hex has 5 physical interfaces. The bridge here is just a logical interface. So I don't really have 6, but I only have 5. The ether one here is the one that is supposed to be connected to the internet, but because of demo purposes, I'm not connected to this one. So this now 2, 3, 4, 5 are the members of the bridge. Okay, so interfaces, I have 5 interfaces. If you will see the bridge, so this is now going to your LAN. If you notice also, you have the defconf. Okay, not the hacker convention. Okay, so default config. Okay, so bridge, that is R running. And if you'll take a look, the ports, the member of the ports are 2, 3, 4, 5. For models that have wireless interfaces, WLAN 1 and WLAN 2, you will see them here as part of the bridge. Okay, so I have 2, 3, 4, 5 as member of the bridge. So there is no VLAN, like I said. This is a bridge VLAN, the traditional VLAN. Switch VLAN, there is no switch VLAN. The layer 3 VLAN as well, okay, is not yet present. So there is no VLAN by default, as what I've said on the previous slides. Okay, so the bridge, this bridge has an IP address of 192.168/24. So this is the thing that you need to so-called know when configuring MikroTik, because if we are used to type 255.255.255.0 in our Windows or other devices, you cannot type it on such a way. Okay, so for example, I have another IP address, for example, purposes 2.1. You cannot do in such a way. Okay, we'll try. So nag-blue sir, but normally it's /24, /25, /26, octets /32. Okay, so /24. Okay, so it will just select a different interfaces, ether 5, so it will not affect. Okay, so it will add that particular IP address. So we add a different IP other than the 192.168.88.1. So if you decide to change this one, so you can just simply double click and just change. For example, I don't want 88, I want 99. So you can change it as well. I can change, guys. I can easily change without affecting my connection because I am not connected via an IP address. I'm connected via MAC. So I can just anyhow change the IP. But of course, don't do it via remote and you are tinkering the public IP side. Of course, it will be disconnected. So I'm just connected in here in LAN in my local area network, and I'm connected via MAC. So I could change the IP address without disturbing my connection to the Winbox. Okay? So basically, yun po ang ating paglagay ng IP addresses. So other stuff. So apart from the IP, the one interface is a DHCP client. Okay? So you see it's red because there is no cable or there is no connection on my Ethernet 1, 0 bits per second, TX and RX reading. So you can say that there is nothing connected on my Ether 1 port. So that is why this is red. This is not a wrong configuration by MikroTik kasi default configuration po yan. Imposible man mali si MikroTik. Pero wala lang pong nakakabit sa Ether 1. So if you will investigate more, okay, it is getting a peer DNS. So what is the ISP giving us a DNS? If this is a check, then we will acquire .dns on here on the server. So right now I'm not having some dynamic servers because I am not connected to my ISP. NTP, Network Time Protocol. So if you want your device, MikroTik device, to synchronize to a network time protocol server, NTP server, be it on your LAN, a different server, or be it outside the internet, then you can choose this. Obviously, you can select your own SNTP, okay, NTP server. You could have the IP address, or you could have the DNS name, phpool, mp, ntp.org. Okay. However, if you are configuring this, your MikroTik must be able to resolve this name. So in this current setting, this MikroTik cannot resolve this because there is no DNS server. So you can have 8.8.8, you can have 9.9.9, or you can have those DNS servers that comes with protection, anti-porn, anti-malicious, and so on and so forth, to resolve this name. Okay, so take note. This is the setting for the DHCP client, and obviously the very important one is add the default route. Okay, so it will add an entry here, which is, if I will have to type, this is a default route, and whatever DHCP server or the gateway, the DHCP server gateway that is giving is to be set here. Of course, I'm not, hindi po siya dapat i-add kasi dynamically po siya. So it will be DAS, okay, dynamic active static route. Okay, so this is very important because default route is needed for you to reach public IP addresses or IP addresses that are not within your local area network. For example, Facebook, YouTube are a different IP addresses. So this is important. But sometimes, if you know, you can have a no here and you configure it yourself, okay, on the IP routes. Okay, so Ether 1. So sir, if I have multiple ISP, Ether 1 and Ether 2, so you have to add another. For example, if you just decide later that you need to add another ISP on port number 2 and it is a DHCP client, then add another DHCP client. Okay, so this one is a default configuration. Okay, so what are the other stuff that are discussed? So bridge DNS. Okay, you'll see by default it is a DNS server. Paano natin malalaman na DNS server siya? DNS server kasi naka-check to. Allow remote request. And if you take a look, there is a DNS entry router.lan. The router itself has a forward lookup zone, which is an DNS A record with router.lan 192.168.88.1. You can also have a DNS cache later. You'll see those websites that frequented by your users. So if I will uncheck this, meaning to say the MikroTik is not a DNS server. Again, different po. Pag nandito, DNS client ka. Ibig sabihin, the MikroTik is trying to reach 8.8.8 for help. Help me resolve this particular name. But if I will click this, MikroTik is a DNS server also at the same time. A DNS server and a DNS client at the same time. So yun po ang atin. Okay? But if you will see, the DNS, medyo wala ka masyadong ma-add if you really go to those DNS servers with multiple records, MX record, pointer record, and so on and so forth. There are so many DNS records, so medyo limited ang ating device. Okay? So far clear, Sir Bullet?
Clear.
Clear. So other things, firewall filter rules are added. So this one is the one that I need to explain more. So IP firewall, okay? So IP firewall filter rules, okay? So this one is a dummy rule, is there because of this line, but later on na lang. So by default, all established, related, and untracked are accepted. Okay, TCP connection. You have these are the connection state. Established, related are accepted by default. Okay, all invalid are dropped. Okay, invalid packets. By default, our MikroTik accepts ping. Okay, so ICMP, action, accept. So this is on the input chain, meaning to say the target is our MikroTik router. When you say input, okay, when you say input chain, okay, the destination is your MikroTik router. So be it from the LAN or be it from the WAN. Okay, for example, my laptop try to ping the MikroTik is an input because my destination is my MikroTik. So someone from the outside world trying to ping also your public IP is also an input. Diba? Input. So by default is accepted. So anything, okay, this is Capsman, Control Access Point Manager, which is a product of MikroTik. Okay, so by default is accepted. Next is anything that is not coming from LAN are dropped. So that is why the very first time you connect to MikroTik, you connect on port number 2, 3, 4, or so on and so forth. You don't connect your cable to port number 1 because under the interface list, the Ether 1 is part of WAN. It's not part of LAN. So this is, okay, how you redraw anything that is coming to my MikroTik as long as not LAN. So this exclamation point here is not a check, it's a inversion or not. So if you hover your mouse, you could see it's a not. Anything na hindi galing sa LAN, bawal kang magka-traffic or bawal kang pumasok, drop. So be it Winbox, be it ping, or be it ping is allowed kanina, telnet, SSH, and so on and so forth. Any other traffic as long as it's not LAN. So sir, how about I'm from outside, I need to access my MikroTik. So of course you have multiple ways on trying to access MikroTik. You can access it by its public IP. So you can add a rule here. So input and allow a certain, okay, for example, Winbox 8291, and allow your house public IP or your office public IP, or if you have a group of public IP, allow it here and allow, accept. So it should be before the rule number 5. If you want yourself to access from one, because for example, sir, I'm doing WISP and I cannot be always at home or always at my network infrastructure to manage my MikroTik. So that's a problem. Okay, that's a problem if you have this default configuration because it's default black. You have to add a rule. Okay, so tunneling are accepted. So fast track. So when you say fast track, any traffic, so forward packets are fast track. Forward. Okay, so forward means to say passing through MikroTik router only. So those packets that are passing through, for example, my computer to YouTube, my computer to Facebook, my computer to Zoom, my computer to Skype, and so on and so forth. The reverse, my friend from outside going to my, if you have a Skype to Skype call, okay, my gaming server talking to my whatever. So forward passing through, as long as your router is not the destination, okay, or the end of the traffic, is forward. So meaning to say, all are fast track. For example, my YouTube traffic is fast track. Fast track is, okay, fast track in MikroTik. Fast track is bypass the, what we call the filter, mangle, and queue. I will have to put an asterisk of queue because there is a certain queue that hindi mababypass ni fast track. If the parent interface is a physical interface, not the global, it will not be faster. You can read at the wiki, or there is a certain queue that cannot be bypassed, but normally it will be bypassed. So you cannot now manage the bandwidth. For example, I want my browsing to be 5 MB only. I want this customer to be that only. Okay, so you need to disable this rule. Okay, and this rule will not be gone, and there's another mangle rule until you reboot your MikroTik. So accept the forward, then drop all invalid. Then finally, the 11th rule is allow anything that is destination NATed. As if it's not destination NATed, drop it. Okay? So, sir, ano po yung destination NAT? Destination NAT sa MikroTik. So this is equivalent to port forward. So if you have a port forward configured on your MikroTik, for example, you host a web server, a mail server in your environment, you can still manage that particular port coming in. Okay? Kanina kasi drop input, di ba? Ang ating ganito. But this is a different scenario because this is port forward to a different device within your LAN. So those port forward configurations are allowed. Anything that is not port forward are dropped. Okay? So coming from one, okay, it's not allowed as long as it's not a port forward. So if you don't have a DST NAT rule here, so by default there is no port forwarding rule in MikroTik, so you have to create your own port forward. So for example, anything that is 8292, okay, going to my whatever destination NAT. Okay, so whatever IP address here, 88.100 to 8291. So if I do a Winbox of let's say 192, for example, this is a public IP 100 colon 8292. For example, it will actually port forward to 8291, provided this is a MikroTik device. Okay, so far clear sa IP firewall filter rules. So for you guys, if you're doing bandwidth management, this is the line that you need to remove because your queue here, okay, simple queues and mangling here, or these are also be removed. When you remove this, will not be read or bypassed because they are fast track. Okay, Sir Bullet, still
Good.
good. Okay, so I think okay. So neighbor discovery. So you have IP neighbors. So I don't have this one. I don't have a neighbors. So but you might want to disable this if you want to have a more secure. Okay, so you have tools Mac Winbox, Mac server. So by default, the LAN is allowed to connect via my Mac Winbox. So that's why I can manage my MikroTik via Mac. So if you don't want, you can also disable this Mac ping server so that you won't see a MikroTik listed here. Okay, you need to supply the correct IP. Okay, for example, it's 88. Let's say 10. So once the Mac server is disabled, by default is enabled. So you won't see those. Next, no bandwidth management. Forward packets are fast track and ISP configurations are the default. Okay. So comes how to start from scratch. So normally, guys, when you purchase MikroTik and you have changes to do, sometimes the easier way around is to what we call start from scratch. However, you'll notice that what if I want my firewall rules? Okay, I want these firewall rules to be copied over. Okay, so I don't want this fast track. For example, I don't want this fast track. I don't want this sorry, this one. Okay, so let's it will be reboot later. Okay, so I can actually copy that firewall rule. So I will go to IP firewall and export. So sorry, filter. Then because I'm copying the filter lines and export the the configuration. So these are filter REC so that you can use it later. Okay. So for example, I want to start from scratch. Okay, I have a different IP, I have a different wireless, I have a different bridge scenario, but I want this firewall rule because it's for security purposes. So you can still, okay, use that. However, you need to export, okay? Or if you can have a photographic memory, memorize it and uh, implement it one by one, okay, up to you. So you have exported, you go to files. So there's a filter RSC. You need to download, okay? Of course, you don't need to download because if you will restore later, you need to upload it. But for purposes of viewing it, I will download it, and you could see. Okay, so I will open by Visual Code. If you are into coding with MikroTik, okay, so it's nice to use not Notepad only, but to use some other software because may mga color highlighting. Okay, so you can copy this later. Okay, so the fast track connection was disabled, so no issues. Okay, so now it's time to reset configuration. So reset configuration. So you have choices. Keep user if you have system users here. Okay, so if you have more users already and you want to keep those users, you can keep the user. But if it's okay to you, you can default. Okay, if the configuration is not that important, you can choose do not backup, and you can do a reset configuration. Okay. So let me check properly if I have reset the correct device because I'm operating a WISP here. Perhaps I am resetting a wrong. So this is hex and double check. So that is now resetting from a no default. Of course, there are videos by Sir Bullet how to reset configuration by using what we call yung pin, yung hard pin niya. Pero marami ding choices doon, caps mode or net install halimbawa. So ito via software if you can access the MikroTik. Okay, so it will take a while. We'll wait.
Di ba sir, paborito mo yung scripting? Kasi naalala ko, kwento mo sa akin. Yung unang MikroTik mo na CCR sa Singapore yata.
Yes, you might do a live stream basic scripting and add scripts on your MikroTik. Not today because we have only 9 minutes. Okay, I'm not a scripting guru, but I can create basic scripts or common scripts.
Hindi mo alam na na yung MikroTik dati may GUI, Winbox.
Oh yeah. So my very first MikroTik, because I was working abroad. My very first MikroTik was CCR. My first MikroTik that I configured was a CCR. However, because I am coming from a letter C background, you know, the networking company, so medyo telnet or command line ang kanilang talagang bread and butter. So was used to configuring MikroTik via command line. Didn't know that there was a Winbox actually. So now our MikroTik was reset, or our hex was reset, so there is no IP address. But you'll notice even though it's resetted, okay, or you notice a default configuration is technically not a zero config. Okay, so there is still system identity or the host name. There is still an admin account, which is the admin, and there are still user groups. Okay, so there is still a host name, system identity, hopefully MikroTik. There is still system user. Of course, if there's no user, how can we log in? And there are default groups, but the rest are gone. For example, IP address is gone. The bridge is gone. The IP firewall filter is gone. The NAT is gone. What else? So the Dhcp server is gone. The DHCP client is gone as well. Okay, so now you start from scratch. So we have a file kanina, and so we'll have to import it files because wala siya. The reason being na wala siya kasi wala siya sa flash. Okay, you need to have it on the flash instead. So desktop. So you have filter. Okay, so let's restore it. So let's see if we can restore via here. Okay, call that restore. So that's why let's have an import file dash name. What's that? Filter.rec. Okay, interface list. So I need to because the firewall rule need to have a interface list LAN, and you have a one. Okay, so close, and you'll have new terminal. You have import file dash name equals filter.rec. Script loaded properly. Remember, we only copied over or back up the filter rules, so there's still no IP address, there still should be no bridge, no ports, okay, but only the filter rules, okay, because we thought that okay, well, this is needed, okay. So yun po, you can start from scratch, but not really from scratch because you have copied over an RSC, put it back and add. Now you can start your MikroTik, okay. So I need to have a bridge, okay. So for example, I need to have this one piso Wi-Fi, a piso net, for example, and you have this piso Wi-Fi, for example, only for example purposes, piso Wi-Fi, and you can assign, for example, this piso net has port number 3, okay, and this piso Wi-Fi has port number 4, piso Wi-Fi, okay. So you can now add addresses now. Okay, so this is the address. So 192.168, let's say 99.1/24. You have for your PisoNet. Okay, you don't need to know what is the network. Click apply and it's there. Then you have another IP for your piso Wi-Fi /24 and your piso Wi-Fi apply. Okay. So one more thing, IP DHCP, because I haven't on the default configuration, hindi ko napakita. So IP Dhcp Server, okay, you can plus here or you can do a Dhcp Setup, okay. So let's go to the faster route, Dhcp Setup, PisoNet, the 99, this is the network address, which is correct, okay. So tama po yan ha, 99.1 ang IP address ng ating router, but he is asking for what is the network address, hindi po 1, which is the network address, okay. Not necessarily 0, it depends on your prefix and how you start your network address. So next, DHCP network, so this is our gateway, which is correct. Next, the addresses to give out, you can change it to 100 or to 50, whatever, 200. Okay, so next, you can have your favorite DHCP servers. You can add more by doing a drop down. 99, next. And list time is hours, minutes, seconds. So let's say 1 hour. So next, and there you go. Okay. So what are added by this setup? There is a network. You can change the DNS servers. Okay. There's no one connected here. IP pool. Okay. This is your LAN. So finally, let's say your port number 1 is a DHCP client, then you can obviously configure that one. Or if you are those with PPPoE account, then you will not use this. Okay, disable, X is disabled. You can do an interface, okay, plus a PPPoE client. And remember, choose your port where you connect your ISP, dial out your user. Okay, so for example, this is telco user. Okay, and telco password. Okay, If your ISP provider can be connected using PPPoE, so you can configure your MikroTik on via a PPPoE client. But again, it's not a default configuration. So you need to add in interface, PPPoE client, and you can see. So make sure settings, hide passwords to make sure that the password is visible and seen for you to review. Okay, add default route so that it will be added, and so on and so forth. Okay, so now your PPPoE client is just waiting for your ISP cable to connect to your MikroTik, and hopefully you'll double check the logs, see if it's connecting or not, be it user password and so on and so forth. Okay, so 759, no default configuration. There are so many things that you need to do to MikroTik that we will surely share for the next Fridays, because tech guys on Fridays, so bawal mag-absent. Bawal mag-absent, Sir Bullet. Fridays talaga. So we will have more topics to you, firewall mangle, dual ISP, etc., etc. Hopefully Fridays will be good. No telco downtime.
Sana.
No blackout, and hopefully COVID pandemic will be long gone before we celebrate our holiday or Christmas and so on and so forth. So now, I think 8. I will end with 8. 5 para wala lang. Reason why I end with 8 so that no one can question, because it's 8 p.m. Okay?
Okay.
Any questions sa ating chat box? I'm not looking at the chat box
check
or
natin.
YouTube chat box.
So wala naman.
Is there, or do we have viewers?
Pero hanggat may isang nanonood, tuloy.
10 viewers.
Ay, milestone
so, Bullet,
yan.
any...
Okay, so ayun, pinag-usapan natin yung about the ano ba yung dapat na pinag-aaralan ng mga beginners. So it is important to know the default configuration, and during dun sa mga training kasi natin, di ba Sir Oxbill, tinuturo natin yung no default para maintindihan.
Yes, correct. Okay, so because as a beginner MikroTik, you don't know what are the other hidden settings involved. So you may find it difficult to go to this menu, So that's why we normally on Academ or training, we want to start you with a fresh config so that there is no other configuration that is affecting your present or current configuration. But there's really wrong answer whether you go to default or no default. The only important thing is if you're going with a default configuration, you know the things that are being configured by default by MikroTik, and you can adjust from there. For example, in the interface list, okay, the list in 1 is only Ether 1, okay? So if you are configuring a dual ISP and you connect on Ether 2, it won't work on your policy tools or your rules if you don't add, okay, Ether 2 on your, for example, Ether 2 is your another ISP. So as long as you know, there is no wrong choice between going to default and no default, as long as you know what are the things that are being configured by default and where to change them, and how this configuration affect. For example, this interface list affects the IP firewall filter. If you notice the script a while ago, when I import the script, it doesn't accept because there is no firewall list that is LAN. So if you don't know that I need to create an interface list that is LAN, then you might wonder, is my importing command wrong? Is the RSC wrong? Or is the RSC corrupted, and so on and so forth? So you might have different views already. So thankfully, we know a bit of basic of MikroTik, then we can maneuver from a default configuration. So that's my take so far. Sir Bullet.
So, tama yon. So, walang right or wrong doon sa no default and
Yes.
default.
Okay.
Basta ang
So,
mahalaga doon is alam natin yung ginagawa natin.
Na-achieve yung customer requirements, yung objective, okay? The speed is met, the requirements are met, and that's the end of story. So whether you go to the faster route, the harder route, and so on and so forth, up to you. It's a learning process, but as you go along, you will know that, okay, you will have some scripts already. So that sometimes Sir Bullet, if you are master in MikroTik already, you don't even care of the no default and the default. You just run RSC here. For example, I have a built-in script already for my ISL. For example, ISL, a bandwidth, single ISP management. I don't care what's the configuration here. I just run this RSC and that's it. Okay, it will have this configuration. Sometimes you don't bother anymore whether it's a default or no default configuration in MikroTik, because MikroTik has a different way also for you to make your work or make your task faster. That's the objective actually.
Tama. Okay, so ganda yung topic. And for the viewers, i-replay naman natin, and dun sa comment section, tell us what you want for the future episodes nitong Tech Guys on Fridays, para makahanap din kami ng content. And habang pandemic pa at di kami makalabas for training, so magaganto muna tayo. And announcement,
yes,
since naka 1K na yung RTG or Rizal Tech Guide, so
wow, congratulations.
Naka 1K na tayo. So sa mga future episodes, mukhang magpaparaffle tayo ng mga item. Yung mga in-unbox ko, ipapamigay natin. Pero yung procedures,
yung box lang i-raffle.
yung box na may laman, yan. And sponsored ba yan, Sir Oxbilat? Okay. So, eto. Ayun. Sandali, lipat natin. Mahirap maging technical all-in-one. Yan. So, thank you for watching this new segment, Tech Guys on Fridays. And sana marami kayong natutunan. And coming from Rizal and Davao, and dun sa mga kaibigan natin na gusto din mag-share, we are open for that. Eh, syempre, mas maganda kung mas marami tayo, di ba? And ayun, thank you very much, and see you again, Sir Oxbill.
See you guys.
See you guys again next
more Fridays with you.
Friday. And we are signing off. Bye-bye.